Chapter 1. The scandal breaks. The morning sun streamed through the sleek glass windows of Liam Callahan's penthouse, casting golden streaks across polished marble and the half-empty whiskey tumbler on his coffee table. His phone vibrated on the counter again, its persistent buzz slicing through the rare silence he craved. He ignored it for the 5th time. Then came the knock on the door. "Liam." A familiar voice called out. "Open up, mate." Liam dragged himself off the couch, rubbing the exhaustion from his eyes. It wasn't just the lack of sleep, it was the kind of tired that lived deep in the bones. When he opened the door, his manager, Gavin, stood there, holding up a tablet like it was evidence in a court case. "Have you seen it?" Gavin asked, brushing past him into the flat. "Seen what?" Liam muttered, following him in. "This." Gavin tapped the screen and turned it toward him. Liam blinked at the image. There it was, his face, front and center, plastered across gossip sites. A grainy photo taken at a late-night bar, an arm slung around a woman he barely knew, a drink in his hand. The headline read, "Callahan's Night Out, Party Boy or Problem." Liam stared for a long beat, expression unreadable. "I wasn't even drunk, doesn't matter," Gavin said, rubbing his temples. "You know how this works. Context doesn't sell, controversy does. The press is circling like vultures. Sponsors are calling. The club's getting nervous." Liam leaned back against the kitchen island, arms folded tightly. "Let them be nervous." "No," Gavin snapped. "That's not how this goes. You don't get to disappear. Not right now. We need to change the narrative fast." Liam arched an eyebrow. "What? An apology video? A charity event with puppies and orphans?" Gavin didn't smile. "An interview, long form, print, with a journalist who isn't interested in fluff. You tell your side, your truth. Humanize yourself again." Liam scoffed. "No one wants my truth. They want a headline they can click." "Not this time," Gavin insisted. "I've already spoken to the Sentinel. They're assigning Sophie Hart." That name pulled Liam's attention. He'd read her pieces sharp, unflinching. Not the kind of journalist who was easily bought or swayed. Definitely not the type to go easy on a footballer with a tabloid past. "She hates people like me, which is why it'll work. She's got integrity. If she finds something worth telling, people will listen. You need this, Liam." He looked away, jaw tight. Somewhere deep inside, he knew Gavin was right. This wasn't just about PR, it was about who he was when the stadium lights went out. And lately, even he wasn't so sure. Finally, he nodded once. "Fine. Set it up." As Gavin made the call, Liam glanced back at the photo on the tablet, feeling the weight of it press against his chest. He wasn't afraid of the world knowing the truth. He was afraid there might not be much left of it to tell. Chapter 2. Sophie Hart. No-nonsense journalist newsroom buzzed with quiet urgency, the kind that clung to the air just before a major story broke. Phones rang, keyboards clacked, and the scent of burnt coffee lingered like a stubborn cloud above the desks. Sophie Hart sat at her corner station, half listening to the chaos, while she skimmed over her notes from a recent investigative piece on education cuts. She was in her element here among deadlines, facts, and the kind of stories that could actually change lives. So when her editor, Martin Doyle, called her into his office with a cryptic, "We need to talk," she braced herself for something serious. She stepped in, notebook in hand. "Close the door," Martin said, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. His grey hair was more disheveled than usual, and his tie hung slightly askew. That was never a good sign. Sophie arched a brow as she sat. "Let me guess. Budget cuts, again?" "Nope. I've got something different for you." He slid a tablet across the desk. Liam Callahan's face stared up at her from the screen. She frowned. "You want me to do a celebrity profile? Not a puff piece. A redemption piece." His team reached out. He's agreed to a long-form feature. No scripts, no PR spin. Sophie narrowed her eyes. "Since when do we do image rehab for footballers?" Martin leaned forward. "You said you wanted bigger stories, more reach. This is your chance. The world's already watching this scandal unfold. If you do this your way, You can shape the conversation, not follow it. Her first instinct was to say no. She didn't chase celebrity gossip. She exposed corruption. She told real stories. The last thing she wanted was to sit across from some arrogant athlete who thought his mistakes deserved sympathy because he could kick a ball well. But still, there was something intriguing about the assignment. Liam Callahan wasn't just any footballer. He was the Footballer England star, known for his precision on the field and chaos off of it. Yet, despite his media persona, there had always been a quiet undercurrent in his interviews, something untapped, and her editor was right. This could be big. Fine, she said slowly, sliding the tablet back across the desk. But I'm not writing a PR piece. If he's looking for a flattery, he can find another writer. Martin smirked. That's exactly why I picked you. As she left the office, Sophie opened her notebook to a fresh page. At the top, she wrote, Liam Callahan. Who is he when no one's watching? She didn't know yet, but she was going to find out. Chapter 3. The first interview cafe was tucked into a narrow London side street. Charming but unremarkable, exactly the kind of place where celebrities went to be invisible. Sophie arrived early, choosing a corner table where she could see both the door and the street beyond. Her notebook was already open, pen resting atop a blank page. A cappuccino cooled beside her, untouched. She wasn't nervous. She didn't get nervous. But she was curious. At exactly 11 o'clock, the bell above the door jingled. Liam Callahan stepped inside, wearing a navy jacket, plain tee, and jeans. No entourage, no sunglasses, just a man who looked tired of being looked at. Their eyes met. He offered a polite nod before walking over. Sophie Hart. She stood. Liam Callahan. They shook hands. His were warm, calloused, strong hands used to gripping more than just a coffee cup. He took the seat across from her. Appreciate you doing this, he said, glancing around. I figured you'd suggest somewhere flashier. I'm not interested in glitz, Sophie replied, flipping open her recorder. I'm interested in honesty. Liam leaned back slightly, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Honesty from a footballer. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. She met his gaze without flinching. You agreed to this, so either you're serious, or you're hoping I'll paint a picture of a misunderstood star. Which is it? He tilted his head. Maybe I'm still figuring that out. She clicked her pen. Then let's start with the obvious. The photo, the woman, the drink. What happened? Liam let out a quiet breath and looked out the window for a beat. It wasn't what it looked like. She was a friend of a teammate. We'd just lost a match. I went out, had a drink, talked to someone who understood the mood. The photo was taken when I said goodbye. You knew cameras would be on you. I'm not stupid, he said. But sometimes, you just want to feel normal, invisible, even. I forgot I don't get to have that. Sophie jotted down notes as he spoke, but her eyes kept flicking up. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't faking contrition. He seemed tired, not rehearsed, just raw. Why agree to this now? She asked. You've never explained yourself to the press before. Liam looked at her for a long moment. Because I'm tired of being reduced to a tabloid headline, and because you don't seem like someone who'll let me off easy. She raised an eyebrow. You're right about that. Their coffee arrived. He thanked the server, then turned back to her. Ask what you came to ask, Sophie Hart, but fair warning I might ask some questions, too. She didn't smile, but something in her chest shifted. This wasn't going to be easy, but it might just be interesting, and maybe just maybe he wasn't who she thought he was. Chapter 4. Beyond the pitch rain glazed the pavement as Sophie stepped out of the cab, umbrella in one hand and her notebook tucked beneath her coat. She stood at the edge of a modest housing estate in East London, the kind built from red brick and quiet resilience. This was where Liam Callahan grew up. It felt surreal. Standing in the place that had shaped a boy the world now saw only in slow-motion replays and headline scandals. She walked through the narrow paths between the buildings, nodding at an older man walking a dog and passing by a group of kids kicking a worn-out football against a garage wall. The laughter was loud, innocent, and oddly grounding. Mrs. Patel, Liam's childhood neighbor, greeted her at the door of number 19. Sophie had arranged the visit through Liam's PR manager, reluctantly approved, with limits, but the older woman welcomed her in warmly. Liam used to help me carry groceries up the stairs when he was barely tall enough to reach the counter, Mrs. Patel said with a chuckle as she poured tea. Always polite, always quiet. He'd spend hours outside with that bull. Said he was going to make it big someday. Sophie scribbled notes, her attention snagging on a framed photo hanging above the mantel. Liam, about 10 years old, standing beside a woman with bright eyes and a tired smile. His mum, she passed away when he was 15. Mrs. Patel said softly, following her gaze. Cancer. It broke him. But he didn't let it stop him, just trained harder. There was something achingly human in that image, a boy shaped by grief, driven not just by talent, but by something deeper. Sophie left the flat with a lump in her throat and her perception beginning to tilt. Next, she visited his former school. The head coach remembered Liam vividly. He was fast, focused. Even then, he played like the ball was an extension of his soul. Football wasn't a game for him, it was his way out. By the time Sophie stood at the edge of the local park, watching the rusted goalposts sway in the wind, she felt the shift. The Liam Callahan she had imagined a spoiled, entitled athlete was crumbling. In his place, a boy emerged, one who had carried grief in his chest and ambition in his feet. When she finally sat on a weather-worn bench and flipped open her notebook, she didn't write questions this time. She simply wrote a name, Liam Callahan, and underneath it, 3 words, more than headlines. Chapter 5. Unexpected vulnerability. Rain had cleared by the time Sophie arrived at Liam's apartment for their second interview. He greeted her at the door with a tired smile, sleeves rolled to his elbows, a mug of tea in one hand. Didn't peg you as a tea drinker, she remarked as she stepped inside. I'm not, but I figured you might be, he said, handing it to her. And I'm trying to be a good host. The apartment was sleek, modern to clean, to impersonal, like a showroom for someone else's life. She wondered how much of it he'd chosen, or if it had all been curated by designers and sponsors. They settled on the sofa, the recorder between them. Let's go deeper, Sophie began. You mentioned last time that people don't really know who you are. So who are you when you're not Liam Callahan, football star? He was quiet for a moment, eyes fixed on a spot just beyond her shoulder. When I'm not that, I think I'm just a bloke who misses his mum. The honesty hit her like a soft, unexpected punch. She was everything, he said, voice low. She worked her jobs and still made it to every match, even if it meant standing in the cold after an overnight shift. When she died, football became the only thing I had left of her. Every time I stepped onto the pitch, I felt like she was there. Sophie's hand tightened around her pen. That's a lot to carry, he nodded. Yeah, and it doesn't help when everyone treats you like you're invincible, like you stop being a person the minute your name starts trending. What about the fame, the endorsements, the parties? Do they help? Or just distract? They're noise, he replied simply. Noise that makes it easier to avoid the silence. But it catches up with you. There was something raw about him tonight, no sarcasm, no media polish, just a man trying to make sense of the life he'd built around pain. Have you ever thought about quitting? She asked. More than once, he said. But then I remember how hard she worked to get me here, and I feel like I owe it to her to keep going, even if I don't always know why anymore. Silence settled between them, heavy, but not uncomfortable. Sophie stopped writing. For the first time, she felt it, not just empathy, but connection, not to the star, or the subject of her story, but to the man sitting in front of her, a man whose wounds still bled beneath the tattoos and press appearances. She reached for her recorder, turned it off, and said softly, "Thank you for telling me that." Liam glanced at her, something vulnerable flickering behind his eyes. Thanks for listening. In that moment, she knew the story wasn't about clearing his name. It was about revealing his heart. Chapter 6. Headlines. An 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐿 article dropped on a Wednesday morning, right as London's rush hour was hitting its peak. Sophie sat at her kitchen table, coffee growing cold beside her laptop, as she refreshed the Sentinel's homepage for the 4th time. And then it was there. Liam Callahan, more than a headline. She clicked the link with a flutter in her chest. The piece was raw, thoughtful, honest. It told the story not of a scandal, but of a man trying to stay human in a world that demanded perfection. She'd woven in quotes from his childhood neighbor, his old coach, and snippets of their interviews that revealed the depth behind his carefully guarded public mask. It wasn't fawning. It wasn't glossy. It was the truth. And within minutes, it was trending. In the first hour, comments flooded in. Readers were surprised, moved. Some admitted to misjudging him. Others thanked Sophie for showing a side of fame they rarely saw. Her phone buzzed with a number she recognized, but hadn't saved. She didn't need to. "Hello," she answered. "Didn't expect to feel emotional reading something about myself," Liam's voice said, soft and bemused on the other end. "But I did." She smiled without meaning to. "You didn't hate it." "Didn't hate it," he repeated. "I actually liked it." "Which is terrifying." Sophie laughed. "It's honest. That's all I promised." There was a pause, not uncomfortable, just lingering. "Well," Liam continued, "thank you for not twisting my words, for seeing all of it. You made it easy," she said. "And she meant it." "Maybe," he said, tone lightening. "Or maybe you're just better at this than you give yourself credit for." Another pause. Then, more tentatively, he added, "Would it be wildly unprofessional to ask if you want to grab a coffee? Not as a source and the journalist, just to people." Sophie hesitated, caught off guard, but she couldn't deny the warm hum in her chest. "Let's not label it. I like coffee." "Great," Liam said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Then consider this a handshake." Off the record, when she hung up, Sophie sat back in her chair, heart ticking faster than it should have. Something was beginning, not just for the story, but for them. And for the first time in a long while, she didn't just feel like a journalist chasing truth. She felt like a woman being seen. Chapter 7. A day off. Just us. Saturday morning air was crisp and sweet, the kind of rare London sunshine that made the city feel softer, more forgiving. Sophie wasn't sure what she'd been expecting when Liam invited her to hang out. No recorder, no notepad, but she certainly hadn't expected him to meet her outside a neighborhood football pitch in joggers, carrying to-take-away coffees and a cheeky grin. "You're late," he teased, handing her a cup. "You didn't say it was timed," she replied, taking it with a smirk. "Besides, journalists are professionally punctual." "I'm exactly 3 minutes early." Liam chuckled and gestured toward the pitch. "Come on. There's a charity training session this morning, mostly kids from the community. I promised I'd drop in." Sophie followed him through the park gates, watching as children ran about, laughing and shouting, their shoes scuffing the grass. A group of them spotted Liam and lit up like fireworks. "Callahan, you're on my team." "No fair, he's a pro." Liam winked at Sophie. "Give me 10 minutes. She found a spot on a wooden bench, sipping her coffee as she watched him play, not as the star athlete under stadium lights, but as a man tossing passes to kids, laughing when he missed a goal, letting one small boy tackle him dramatically and fall on top of him in a heap. He was all ease and charm out there, but it was more than that. He was real, present, at peace. After the game, Liam jogged over, flushed and breathless. "Still think I'm just a headline?" Sophie said, pretending to consider. "You're also an unpaid babysitter with grass stains on your knees," he grinned, brushing a lock of damp hair from his forehead. "Want to make a proper day of it." They spent the afternoon meandering through the neighborhood, grabbing ice cream from a corner shop, wandering through a flea market, and laughing over whose taste in music was more questionable. They sat on the steps of an old fountain, sharing a cone like teenagers, the air between them thick with something new, something warm. At one point, their hands brushed and lingered. Neither pulled away. "I don't do this," Sophie said quietly, her voice almost lost beneath the sounds of the city. "Do what?" he asked. "This," she gestured between them. "Let work and life blur." Liam's gaze softened, Maybe it's not blurring. Maybe it's just living. She looked at him then not as a subject or a story, but as someone she wanted to know beyond the pages. And for the first time since they'd met, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just a detour. It was the beginning of something real. Chapter 8. Rumors and Real Feelings. By Monday morning, the photos were everywhere. Sophie sat at her desk, her laptop screen flooded with headlines. Liam Callahan's mystery woman revealed. Football star and journalist spotted getting cozy in the park, from interview to intimate. Her heart sank. The shots were candid. Liam laughing. He handed her ice cream, their hands brushing on a park bench, her smiling up at him. He was the only person in the world. They weren't doing anything scandalous, but the framing of the articles twisted something innocent into something suggestive. She barely had time to close the tab before Martin Doyle called her into his office. He didn't mince words. "You need to get ahead of this." Sophie folded her arms. "There's nothing to get ahead of. We had a coffee, watched a community game. I didn't cross any lines. You're already in the grey zone," Martin replied, rubbing his temples. "I defended you, but the editor-in-chief is watching. If anyone gets the idea this story was personal, we all lose credibility." Sophie bit down the frustration swelling in her throat. "You told me to get to the heart of him." "I did. At what cost?" He shot back. "You want to be respected as a serious journalist. Then you don't become part of the narrative." Back at her desk, Sophie stared at the blinking cursor on her empty draft screen. Everything she wanted to write now felt compromised. Later that evening, Liam called. "You okay?" he asked, his voice unusually quiet. She sighed. "They think I've lost my objectivity." A pause. "Have you?" She hesitated. "No, but I might be starting to lose my distance." There was another silence on the line, this one longer, heavier. "I can back off," Liam finally said. "If this is hurting your career." "No," she cut in, sharper than she meant. "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying?" "Sophie." She closed her eyes. "I don't know." The truth was, she did know, she just wasn't ready to admit it aloud. Not yet. That she looked forward to his voice, that she replayed his laugh in her mind, that her heart beat differently when she was near him. But if she let that part of herself in, what happened to the story? "Maybe we need some space," she said gently, "just until this blows over." Liam didn't argue. "Right, of course." And yet, the moment the call ended, she felt the cold edge of something beginning to fray. Chapter 9. Lines in the sand rain streaked across Sophie's apartment window, blurring the city lights into smudges of gold and grey. She sat curled on the couch, laptop open but untouched, a half-written article blinking like a heartbeat she couldn't sync with. Words refused to come, not because she didn't have them, but because every sentence felt like it teetered too close to him. Liam. Her phone lit up. His name. Come by the pitch. "I'll be alone. Need to talk." She hesitated, then grabbed her coat. The stadium was quiet when she arrived. No crowd, no cameras, just the hum of field lights and the echo of her own steps as she walked out onto the sidelines. Liam stood near the center circle, arms folded, looking up into the night sky. "You still come here when it's empty?" she asked softly. He turned, gave a weary smile. "It's the only place I feel like I belong sometimes." She walked out to him, their footsteps damp against the grass. "Why did you ask me here?" "I don't like how we left things," he said. "Feels like you're pulling away." "I'm trying to protect my career," she replied, not meeting his eyes. "I've worked too hard to be taken seriously, just to be written off as Callahan's girlfriend in a sidebar." "That's not what you are." "Not yet," she said, voice tight. "But that's where it's headed, isn't it?" Liam took a step closer. "What if that's not a bad thing?" She flinched. "You don't get it. This story, you are the biggest thing I've ever written. If I mess this up, it's not just a bad look. It could end everything I've worked for." "I never asked you to risk anything," he said, hurt creeping into his voice. "All I ever wanted was honesty. And for a while, I thought that's what we had." "We did," she whispered. "Maybe we still do. But I don't know how to separate the truth I'm writing from the truth I'm feeling." He looked at her for a long time, jaw clenched. "Do you think I'm using you?" "No," she said instantly. I think I'm scared. Of what? She swallowed. Of being the girl who falls for a subject. Of losing my voice. Of losing myself. Liam's voice softened. And what if you're the girl who finds something real in a world full of spin? Sophie looked away, eyes stinging. I need time. Space to figure it out. Liam nodded slowly. Then take it. But don't forget I never asked to be your headline. I just wanted to be your truth. She stood still as he walked away, his footsteps fading into the quiet stadium. Lines had been drawn. And for the first time since they met, they stood on opposite sides. Chapter 10. When it rained, the rain returned on match day, unrelenting, cold, and heavy, soaking the city like a metaphor Sophie couldn't ignore. She watched from the press box, her notepad clutched tightly in her lap. Though she hadn't written a single word, Liam was off his game. From the very first whistle, it showed. His passes were a second too slow, his shots wide, his focus fractured. The commentators tried to be diplomatic. Off day, mental fatigue, pressure from the recent media frenzy. But Sophie knew he was unraveling, and so was she. Back home, soaked to the bone and emotionally wrung out, Sophie stared at the blinking cursor on her laptop. Her final article was due. The feature that would close the arc, his redemption, his humanity, the story she'd been shaping from day one. But everything she wrote felt hollow. She clicked through her old notes, audio recordings, photos. She replayed their first interview. The warmth of his voice when he told her about his mum. The quiet tremble when he said, I'm just a bloke who misses his mum. Somewhere along the way, she'd started writing for the world instead of for the truth. And the truth, raw, inconvenient, beautiful, was that Liam Callahan wasn't just a footballer clawing back his reputation. He was a man who had let her see him, and she had fallen for him. Word by word. Sophie opened a fresh document. No quotes, no clever hooks, just a blank space for honesty. She started slow. This isn't the story I intended to write. I set out to capture a scandal and found something else entirely. Man with a heavy heart and a quiet strength. A boy who ran faster than his grief. And a man who's still learning how to rest. This is not an image correction. This is a revelation. She wrote like the rain, steady, unfiltered, pouring everything out. The doubts, the layers, the softness behind his guarded smirks. The way he made the world feel less cynical. When she was done, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt seen. And for the first time in weeks, the silence in her flat felt peaceful instead of empty. It was still raining when she sent the article to her editor. But this time, it didn't feel like something was breaking. It felt like something was finally being washed clean. Chapter 11. The final feature. The sun broke through the clouds on the morning Sophie's final article went live, casting a golden hue over the city as if the sky itself had been holding its breath. The piece was front and center on the Sentinel's homepage, accompanied by a single, understated photo of Liam mid-match, mud-streaked, determined, utterly human. Liam Callahan, the man behind the noise. Sophie didn't reread it. She'd already poured her heart into every line. Instead, she sat in her favorite corner of the newsroom, watching the reactions roll in. Her inbox filled with messages, some from readers who'd never watched a match in their lives, others from lifelong fans who finally saw something in Liam they hadn't before. The comments weren't about scandal or fame. They were about heart. And beneath it all, Sophie felt something shift inside her. Not pride, exactly, something softer, peace. Then her phone buzzed. Liam Callahan. She hesitated for only a second before answering. Hey. There was silence on the other end for a heartbeat. Then, I read it. Her breath caught. And I had to stop halfway through and walk around my flat, he said, his voice rougher than usual. Didn't know someone could write me like that. Like you saw the bits I tried to hide and didn't turn away. Sophie smiled, eyes stinging. I didn't turn away, Liam. I just saw you. He was quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was full. I didn't know what to expect, he said. But I didn't expect to feel known. Her throat tightened. You weren't just a story. You were never just a story. He laughed softly, the sound warm and aching. "You're dangerous with words, Sophie Hart." She leaned back in her chair, heart pounding. "So are you with silence." They didn't say much after that. They didn't need to. Everything was already between the lines. By mid-afternoon, the Sentinel's site had nearly crashed from traffic. Colleagues came by to congratulate her. Even Martin gave her a rare, sincere nod of approval. But Sophie's thoughts were with him. With Liam. And the way he said known, like it was something he hadn't felt in years. Her article was finished. But maybe, just maybe, their story was only beginning. Chapter 12. The Apologize. Stadium buzzed with life chants echoing through the stands, cleats thudding against turf, and the whistle of the final call slicing through the evening air. But Sophie barely heard any of it. She stood just beyond the barrier that separated press from players, her press pass clutched tightly in her hand. The crowd was dispersing, the floodlights dimming, and still, she waited. Liam hadn't played tonight. He'd been on the bench, wrapped in his jacket, watching the match with an unreadable expression. She wondered if he'd seen her in the stands. She wondered if he'd expected her. And then there he was. He emerged from the tunnel, damp hair pushed back, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, eyes scanning the edge of the pitch. When they landed on her, he paused mid-step. Sophie stepped forward, nerves buzzing through her like static. "Hey." Liam didn't speak right away. He looked tired, guarded, beautiful in a way that made her ache. "I read it again," he said at last, voice low. "Your article." She nodded. "I meant every word." He gave a small smile. "I know. That's what scared me." She took a breath, steadying her voice. "I didn't come tonight as a journalist. I came because I owe you an apology." Liam's brows lifted slightly. "I got scared," she continued. "Not of you, of what it meant to feel this, to care about someone and still try to stay objective. I let the story define our boundaries when really, you were never just a story to me." He looked at her for a long, silent moment. Then he dropped his bag and crossed the space between them in 3 strides. "I didn't want to be just a headline in your life," he said quietly. "I wanted to be your story." Her eyes welled, but she smiled. "You are." He reached for her hand, and she didn't hesitate this time. Their fingers laced together, like they'd been waiting for it. And beneath the emptying stadium, under lights that still flickered like stars, Liam leaned in and kissed her soft, sure, full of the kind of promise that didn't need words. The world might still be watching, but in this moment, it was just them, just Liam and Sophie. No scandal, no roles. Just a people who had finally found their way back to the same page. Chapter 13. Together in the spotlight. Headlines came fast this time, but not the kind that stung or twisted the truth. Callahan opens up. The man behind the boots and the byline. Liam and Sophie. A love story born from the truth. Football's favourite couple. It was strange, being part of the story. Sophie walked into the newsroom that Monday to a round of knowing smiles and more than a few raised eyebrows. Her article was still pinned to the homepage, but now, so were candid shots of her and Liam laughing over coffee, walking hand in hand. A quiet moment between the rush. "You're the most famous person in this building now," Martin joked as he passed her desk. "Even more than my coffee machine." Sophie smiled, but her nerves hummed just beneath the surface. This wasn't what she'd planned. Love had never been part of the career blueprint. But then again, neither was Liam. They took things slow. Their first official public outing as a couple was a local charity gala. Liam wore a crisp black suit, Sophie a simple emerald dress that brought out the warmth in her eyes. Cameras flashed, but Liam never let go of her hand, not once. He introduced her as Sophie, "My partner in crime and my favourite journalist." And later that night, when the lights dimmed and the world quieted, they slipped away to a balcony overlooking the Thames. "You sure you're okay with all this attention?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "I've interviewed politicians and chased down crooked CEOs," she said. "I think I can handle dating a footballer, but not just any footballer," he teased. "The Liam Callahan." She rolled her eyes, but her smile gave her away. "Don't flatter yourself." He leaned in closer, lips brushing hers. "Wouldn't dream of it. Behind closed doors, They learned how to share space, how to blend to very different lives. Sophie taught him how to make proper pasta sauce. He taught her how to juggle a football without falling over. They argued over what to watch, what takeout to order, and who got to control the playlist. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and slowly, the spotlight faded, not because the world stopped watching, but because Sophie and Liam stopped needing it. They weren't news anymore, they were just together. Chapter 14. Career Crossroads letter arrived on a Thursday morning, sleek envelope, heavy cardstock, and the emblem of the New York Globe pressed into the corner like a quiet challenge. Sophie stared at it for a long moment before finally opening it. "We're impressed with your work on the Liam Callahan feature. Your voice is sharp, honest, and compelling. We'd like to offer you a senior feature writer position based in our Manhattan office. Let's talk." Her heart thudded. It was everything she'd dreamed of: an international platform, real resources, the chance to shape narratives on a global scale. But as she reread the letter, excitement twisted into something murkier. That night, she found Liam in the kitchen of his flat, barefoot and cooking something that smelled suspiciously like he was improvising. "You ever follow a recipe?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "I follow instinct," he replied, not looking up. "It's more romantic that way," she smiled, then held up the letter. He glanced at it, then at her. "New York." She nodded. He turned off the stove and leaned against the counter. "Quiet. Say something." Sophie whispered. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Of course I am. You deserve this. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel like the beginning of the end." Sophie walked to him, her hands finding his. "It doesn't have to be. You'd be there. I'd be here. We both know what long distance does to people, especially people with jobs like ours." She squeezed his hands tighter. "We don't have to decide tonight." Liam gave a sad smile. "But we do eventually." The days that followed were full of unspoken questions. Liam trained harder, staying late after practice. Sophie poured herself into writing, but her words came slower, heavier. They still slept wrapped around each other, but some part of them had already started drifting. And yet, there were moments: quiet cups of tea in the morning, warm glances across rooms full of noise, where she saw the fear behind Liam's eyes. Not fear of losing her, fear of letting her go for her own good. She wasn't sure which scared her more. One night, they stood on the rooftop, the city glittering around them. "I used to think success was about headlines," Sophie said softly. "Now I wonder if it's about knowing who you are when no one's watching." Liam turned to her, brushing his thumb along her cheek. "And who are you?" "Sophie Hart." She looked up at him, her heart aching with love and uncertainty. "I'm someone who doesn't know how to walk away from this, from you." But the truth lingered in the silence between them. She might have to. Chapter 15. The goal was the stadium erupted as the final whistle blew. A deafening roar of celebration rolling through the stands like thunder. England had won the European Championship. And Liam Callahan had scored the winning goal. He collapsed to his knees in the center of the pitch, arms lifted skyward, eyes wet not from the lights, but from something far more personal. Teammates swarmed him, pulling him into a circle of jubilation, but his gaze was already searching the stands. He wasn't looking for the cameras, he was looking for her. Sophie watched it all unfold from the press gallery, fingers clenched tightly around her lanyard. She'd turned down New York a week ago. Not for Liam, not exactly, but because she'd realized her voice didn't need skyscrapers to echo. It needed truth, and hers lived here. The piece she was working on now wasn't about Liam Callahan, the football star. It was about Liam, the man who taught her that the most honest stories were the ones you lived. Down on the pitch, the team gathered for the trophy ceremony. Flashbulbs blinding, champagne flying through the air. Liam stepped forward to speak. He was still breathless, shirt damp with sweat, a medal around his neck. He took the microphone, eyes steady. "I want to dedicate this win to someone who reminded me that the game isn't the only thing worth fighting for," he said, his voice strong and sure. "Sometimes, the greatest goal you'll ever score is love." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the stadium, but Liam didn't care. He handed the mic off and jogged straight off the field. straight past the crowd, straight to the tunnel where Sophie now stood waiting. "You didn't have to make a speech," she said, voice trembling, smile breaking through. He stopped in front of her, cheeks flushed, heart pounding. "I did. Because for the first time in my life, I scored something that mattered." She blinked against the tears. "You were brilliant out there." He leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers. "You're the reason I could be." And then, without fanfare or flashing bulbs, he kissed her softly, deeply, completely. The world faded. The cheers became distant. And all that remained was the two of them, right where it all began. Not a headline, not a scandal. Just Liam and Sophie. And a love story worth every page.